Well, hello, and welcome once again to the Practice Forward podcast. This is episode 3 of what it sounds like it's going to be a very interesting course of events with lots of really interesting guests. Today, we have a super interesting guest, Bill Murphy from Space Architectural Studio in Skaneateles, New York, which is a really extraordinary part of the world. Space Architectural Studio is a full-service architectural firm with over 3 decades of experience. They specialize in both residential and commercial projects, emphasizing a hands-on approach to ensure clients receive their desired spaces within budget constraints. So, Bill, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Great to have you here today. We had a really interesting conversation the other day about some of the ways that you're working and some pretty innovative stuff that I'm interested to hear more about. Before we get into it, I'll just say Scan2Plan is sponsored by, Practice Forward is sponsored by Scan2Plan. Scan2Plan is the LiDAR to BIM and CAD team that can scan and model any building in weeks. And we're gradually becoming known as the measure of excellence for architects and engineers. Visit us at scan2plan.io. That's scan number 2 plan.io. So, Bill, so you have kind of a regional practice in the Finger Lakes, right? Yep. And it's really built it out with breadth and precision. So, what's defining success for space today, and how's that evolved?
Space today is really now a full-time focus for me. It hasn't always been, but through my career, I've done a number of different things, and now space is full-time attention for me, and really growing the practice is what we're trying to do. So we've been bringing on young people coming out of college and university programming that are very tech savvy and innovation forward, and then training them to eventually become licensed architects in the state of New York. We got a very interesting kind of studio practice mentality, but definitely a lot of tech and innovation present in everything we do every day.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about that. So, your work balances deep client sensitivity with advanced digital tools. So, when you're onboarding a new client, what's the first move with them? Do you whiteboard it? Do you do a walkthrough? How do you get started?
I think it depends on the project type. If it's a existing house or existing space that's going to undergo a renovation, I think the answer is that we would come in and measure and essentially document the existing conditions like Scan2Plan does with their LiDAR. This would allow everybody to walk through a white mode type model. And sometimes we texture those white mode models to look totally photorealistic in their existing way. Think paint colors and flooring and ceilings and lighting. Less about showing wear and tear, but just showing the mapping of the image or texture.
It helps them feel a little more immersed in it. I know architects are happy to look at gray surfaces, but the clients kind of might want to see some color, right?
Yeah, and what it does is it usually we'll meet at their house, and it allows them to immediately see the level of accuracy, because you can look at the screen, and most people that are that intimately familiar with their own space can instantly recognize that the proportion is correct of the room, and that the size and where the light's coming from, it all seems to ring true. So most clients are pretty impressed right there, and it's a great credentialing. because you've come in with your team, you've measured, you've documented the existing conditions, and now you're, showing that. When it's a new house, it becomes trickier as to when you make the jump from like a planned sketch to flying through the model.
Right.
And that becomes a little harder, but I use it very early in the process to walk through the plan, for sure.
So when we were talking, you were saying how you're using Enscape and you're starting to use some immersive tools in VR, so you can actually bring your clients into the spaces, right? So when did those kind of immersive tools stop becoming experimental for you and start actually becoming like an essential part of your workflow?
So we had previously, got into Revit probably, I don't know, pretty heavy in say 2003, 2004, something like that. And we'd always used it to model, but then like for any sort of rendering or things like that we were going to do, we'd usually export it, bring it somewhere else and try to do something different with it. And that took a lot of time. So what we do now today is really pretty amazing. We use it pretty early. We use it pretty often. It really started becoming really used all the time in probably COVID. And I would say during COVID. During COVID, we had to figure out a way to keep working. And basically it became to just present everything in Enscape. You couldn't, be in the house measuring when they were home. You could never really talk about it, but y'all could join a Google Meet and look at the same exact Enscape model and fly through it together and talk about it. So that became the point where we really kept everything going. And then we use the model with multiple contractors and clients as the meeting tool, because we couldn't meet on site together as a group because we were in different, little pods or whatever you might say. It was, I think then that it really started being used on every single project, and we haven't looked back. I mean, we use it continuously. Every project gets modeled in Revit 3D fully. Not every project gets textured or photo mapped to be photoreal. Some of them stay in a very white mode, or just have a couple of finishes where we'll get into that. And it just really depends on the client and how you're going to work with that.
Yeah. Well, hey, I have to say, I think you might impress your clients even more if you had a scan to plan model off the bat, because we have all of our textures included and all those little details that the clients love to see.
Yeah, that's definitely something I'm excited to incorporate here in one of these upcoming projects for sure.
Definitely. So when you bring your clients into VR, does that make certain decisions easier or harder?
I think it makes the decision that you're going to talk about different. And what I mean by that is that without that tool, the questions they are going to ask you are very different.
Yes.
But when you show them everything and let them see what it's going to be, it's not necessarily that them asking a question is challenging you. It's an opportunity for you to make it more like they want it to be.
Right.
And what I find is that if you're a good listener at that time, then you can incorporate the change. It gets made the way they want it and need it to be the first time. And everybody ends up being more satisfied in the long run. It's a really you just have to let it's a great tool because it poses the questions that need to be posed, that may not come up looking at just a plan view or just an elevation of a certain space or project place.
Yeah, well, it seems to me like so many architectural and design choices are really so much about scale and proportion. And I'm always amazed that people can make so many choices. And I suppose that's one of the gifts of the architect, is that you can look at a set of drawings and really understand the scale and proportion and impact just from the abstraction of a 2D drawing. But it's kind of like a musician being able to read music. But for lay people like myself and other your customers, for them to actually be able to see a model at a human scale and actually really feel immersed in it and have a great understanding of that kind of scale and positioning, that must be really useful.
Well, it definitely, we've had some clients like build a deeper basement, things like that, because they get in the Oculus headset and they're walking around down in the basement. That's maybe a 12-course basement. And they're like, man, we're building this whole new house, and these beams and all this duct work down here, it just is a little low. I'm not looking to like swing a golf club down here, but what if we just added one more course and made it a 13th course?
Right.
That takes it from 96 inches to 108 inches, give or take, or 104 inches, give or take. But that little step up in difference, and that's just from using the Oculus and the handsets and just kind of feeling where things are and just walking in it and generally saying, yeah, I know we're not using it for anything, but it might just be nicer if this was a little taller.
Sure.
We've also had clients raise the plate height in a first floor. It feels too much like it's like a slot. It's a long horizontal shape. Like, how do we change that? Can we add a little more height? Well, it's just adding cost. And the answer is always somewhere as, what do you want the budget implication to be? And essentially it costs money to go in both directions, right? When you add height, you're adding more material. When you, spread out from 200 to 220 square feet, you're, increasing your cost too. So definitely both directions impact that cost.
So do you ever get into a situation when you're collaborating deeply with your clients like this, and, they want to see something and you don't really feel like you can build it cleanly?
I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty adept at modeling and Revit. I definitely think I can give that. Like, I don't know that I get worried about how it's going to model. I just sometimes have to model it a different way. Stairs are often not necessarily modeled with stairs. It is nice to use that tool when it's able to work appropriately, but that's not always the case. So, it's I worry more about giving the actual whatever they want, the physical needs that it needs to make it happen. Oftentimes just like the physics of the headroom above a staircase, or getting all of the stuff that needs to fit in the box. The general space planning of it, like those are the things that I think tend to really anyway, I guess what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of different ways to do things, and if you're creative and can think a little outside of the box, you can really model anything.
Sure.
Whether you can physically make that happen is where I think the worry is. And like,
yeah, I guess to me that's more about, obviously you can model anything, but can you actually build it?
Right. It's the buildability of it.
Right. Well, where is that threshold? Where is that kind of threshold? I mean, at a certain point, right, the fabrication logic has to shape the design at some point, so like, do you ever feel as if you've gone too far in the model and then you have to rethink it based on fabrication?
No, I don't think so, because a lot of times we're having talks about the style of building we're going to choose pretty early on in the project, the projects that I work on. Like we're working on a pole barn for a contractor at the moment, and it's a pole barn. We've done a few of them. We have a model that we're going to use as a base. It's a pretty simple rectangular pole barn. We might change the roof pitch. We're going to check some header sizes for some doors, but largely the way the pole barn is modeled is going to be very similar to the way we model our pole barns. And we're going to start with one that we've already kind of set up with the necessary families and component systems to kind of achieve the framing need. It's definitely going to make it more efficient, but that's a little different than, say, a house. But the way we're going to build a house largely is going to be the same irregardless. There's nothing that we're going to be able to over model with the way that we model. I think Revit levels make it really, really effective in how you can choose to put together your models and really make them quite flexible and mobile if you level them appropriately. And then, horizontally, and getting that data right from the existing conditions is always critical. Using a LiDAR scan, the accuracy there is going to be incredible. So huge benefit to having that capability. We do everything with a 1/2-inch laser, and we kind of measure to that 1/2-inch tolerance. It goes a lot more accurate than that, but when we model, due to gravity and shifting and different settling that occurs, nothing stays plumb level and square. So
tell me about it.
It's definitely a kind of moving target to be perfectly plumb level and square.
Right. Yeah. So is there, are there any kind of design principles that you have in Revit that are really non-negotiable for you, and or like when you're teaching these students you're working with, or what are you telling them about, what's really non-negotiable in a model?
Well, I think the way that it's put together, so wood frame structure, right? It's going to be made with a 2x6 structure on the outside wall. Occasionally we'll explore going to a 2x4 if we're trying to get like lead points or some other really efficient. So if it's discussed in the project, floors, based on how big it is, might be a 2x10, might be a 2x12, might be a TJI, but the levels help us be really flexible there. And it comes down to building to the outside face of the core of the walls. You don't want to overlock. A lot of people tend to just look at things and try to lock everything together. Well, that makes it really hard to work with. and you don't want to find yourself modeling things in place that really shouldn't be.
Right.
That tends to lead to lots of problems because you've picked other things. And I generally think as long as you really go into it knowing you can't, just don't constrain things. Like if you're going to make a constraining, a locking, you're going to do something like that, you got to really think a few times if in the project file is the right spot to be doing that.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that becomes a pretty non-negotiable, like, don't go modeling something in place before we talk about it.
Sure.
And the other thing is that outside face of the core face. And that's true with our structure roofs, our floors, our walls, our ceilings. And it's really understanding what that framing joint looks like and being able to like model it in the same way. And then a step deeper than that is taking just that, say, structural foundation outline, which is what's captured on a survey document, and being able to like take that and understand everything is built around that framing line.
Yeah.
And really like that becomes a huge thing in the model. If the survey says this, we can't be off 2 feet from that. Like something's going on. So like that's our job to figure it out now, as opposed to once they open it in 3 months and start the job, they find this extra 2 feet or in worst case, not enough. And they're short of 2 feet. And then it becomes a scramble. So, the more accurate you can be up front, the better.
Right. Okay. So another thing you mentioned to me about also sharing your models with your clients and having them looped in on the modeling process, is you said that I don't know if this is through Enscape or some other thing, but you said that you had you're able to bring an iPad into the building that's being renovated, and it becomes like a window into the world of what's going to happen in the future. So the client can kind of pan the iPad around and be able to see all the new changes that are going to happen to the space.
That's right. Indoors or outdoors. It's very cool, very useful tool. It's called.
Is that done through Enscape, or how do you do that?
Yeah, it's called The Viewer. It's a separate. So what you do is you take a series of 360 photographs, both at the site and in the model. And then essentially when you get on site, you spin the axis to make sure you're looking the right way. And once you set it, wherever you move that iPad, you've got what it's gonna look like.
Wow.
It's very cool.
It sounds like it's a smart way of replacing targets and other things that you would need other kinds of hardware to locate that iPad in space, right?
Yeah, so this is more generic, right? Like, stand at the fireplace and like spin the model to where you're at the fireplace.
Yeah, that's a really smart way of doing it.
Get it kind of aligned, and then you lock it there.
Yeah.
And then that opens up the ability to move it and spin it everywhere else. It's very cool. It does have a small monthly fee, but it's out of the UK. And it's called The Viewer. It's a very cool little tool. It's very helpful with planning boards and zoning boards of appeals, especially if you get the chance to get them on site, because you really can show them how little of a impact your development is going to have. It's a lot more compelling when you're holding up a little iPad and it's looking at the big blue sky. As
Yeah.
opposed to you're looking at a sheet of paper and your building is the biggest thing.
Exactly right. Yeah.
And again, it comes down to proportionate scale and how you present it, right? Like,
Yeah.
in 3D, live outside in blue sky, open air, it looks small.
Right. Yep.
Most things. I'm sure
Sure.
there are some projects that can look large.
Yeah.
But not anything I work on.
Well, these are all just amazing techniques for getting all the stakeholders on board with the project at every stage along the way, so that, I always say everybody's just on the same page and they know what to expect, and there's not going to be any surprises down the road, right? So it's interesting to hear all these different ways of getting people engaged at all the different critical phases of the project.
Yeah. More visual you can make your presentation, and the more things that you can show and people can agree to. And then the other thing I think has been key is they get to build it kind of as you go. So first, when we do a new house, the first time they walk through it, it's all white. And that's the shopping meeting, is what I call it. It's usually like, all right, the floor plan's pretty locked in at this point. You might have some small modifications that keep happening, but mostly the floor plan, area, diagram, maybe a door swing flips, or you end up with a pocket door. There might be some smaller tweaks that happen through further, but this is kind of a floor plan lock. Okay, we're now shifting, we're going into now shopping. And when we're going shopping and going to make all these selections, they come back after their first shopping trip with all the pieces. We put all the pieces in. Sometimes looks fantastic. Other times looks like a dog's.
They're shopping in an actual store, in a physical store. And then do you go ahead and model all that stuff and put it in, or how does that work?
So a lot of it is a texture choice, right? So like hardwood floors. Right. Like I can put hardwood floors in there till the cows come home. But that's not going to help them make a choice.
Yeah.
What will help them make a choice is going to a showroom like Coster's in downtown Syracuse, where you can stand on 4 foot by 4 foot of, I don't know, hundreds of different floors.
Right.
And you can stand on it. You can look at, it's big enough. You can see the repeat. You understand everything about it. A lot of times what will happen is a client will go there, make a few choices. I could see this working for us. I could see this working for us. Potentially it could be this. Then we'll put all of those kind of in there as options. Yeah. And be able to click through them on command.
Right.
Stone is another one, so we'll start with, say, going to like a Paragon Supply and going to a Paragon Supply and looking at cultured stones, looking at some real stone options, seeing what's available, trying to pick something. If they don't find something there, or they ultimately decide they want to go to like a full stone veneer, then we go to the stone quarry, something like Sensitive up near Rochester, or there's a couple other locations in central New York as well. But these places, they have a lot of experience, and if you show them an image of what you're trying to do, a lot of times they can point you in the right direction or help you communicate with the right quarry. They might come up with a couple different choices or a couple different stones to be used in the same project. Once they kind of come up with those stones, then I bring it back into my team, and we figure out what's going to be the best way to model that texture and get that stone to read like it does in reality. And that's kind of how choices get made. It really becomes a confidence tool. And that's what I tell people early and often. Like, I'm going to give you my job is to give you confidence that you're making the right decision with your capital.
Sounds like it.
Nobody wants to spend $1 million and say, I hate it.
Right.
And I'm not going to
in this regard, I'd say that, like, I think it seems like your work really blends into the fabric of this community that you're in, which is very, historically minded and traditional in some ways.
Sure.
But it seems like, the way, and obviously you guys are very tech forward, but you're really using tech as a way of helping communicate and helping manage expectations and, creating consensus.
And getting it right.
Yeah.
Long
so, speaking of, you seem like you sort of got your finger on the pulse of what's going on here. So, what do you think about, like, over the next 5 years? What do you think, AI, procedural modeling, things like this? Do you feel as if that's going to really influence the residential practice? Do you see yourself adopting any of that or avoiding it? Or
I'll tell you a little story, and you're going to appreciate this because this happened between our last discussion and this one.
Oh, really?
I had a meeting with a client, and we were talking about a really small detail, something that's like 5/8 of an inch diameter in size, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, a quarter. If I'm holding up a quarter, in an Enscape model, we're talking about what's on the end of the quarter. Think of like an old furniture knob that might look like a little daisy or a little flower, something really super delicate and small. And in the meeting, I'm like, it could be anything. We could put like a coin on there. It could be like a nickel. It could be a buffalo nickel. It could be anything. Yeah. And the client says to me, well, there's this one thing I've been thinking that could work. And she pulls up this super ornate lion's head furniture knob. And it's like the head of the lion and then the mane of the lion into a round furniture knob that is no bigger than an inch in diameter. It's all out of polished nickel.
Mm-hmm.
So what we then decided was we're going to take those knobs and we're going to essentially attach them to the end of our glass shelf support. We're going to fuse those two objects together.
Yeah.
And we're going to have essentially 6 of these little lion heads supporting 2 glass shelves, each side of this range and hood. We took a picture of the lion head hardware offline from the supplier. And a member of my team, in about 20 minutes yesterday, we had a 3D model made using this like pictured objects, OBJ, sort of
kind of photogrammetry process,
AI thing. And whatever it did, it works. And we put them in there. And yeah, if you get really, really close, you can definitely tell what it is. From 10 feet in the model, it's totally believable. Yeah, the scale's correct. The material shows, like, everything shows up appropriately. So that's really the kind of first time we've tried that process. And really, it's like, hey, we don't know what's out there. Here's a crazy little task that I know that we could spend a ton of time trying to figure out and get it perfect. I don't want you to do that. Figure out another way. Like, figure out what's out there that can do this for us in a couple of minutes. Spend an hour on it. And we spent about 20 minutes and we had it up and awesome. And it totally served its purpose. And now we'll use that tool going forward.
I tell my team the same stuff all the time. Like, if you can't figure out how to do it in an hour, you're probably doing it the wrong way, because there's so many tools out there for everything
Yeah.
you can imagine now, you know?
Yeah. And then it becomes the buildability portion, right? That's where you can definitely model anything. You can't build anything.
Right.
You've got to have enough sense in your mind when you're putting these things together, what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the skill set.
Yeah.
And that's where, you know, gravity is always going to be there. That's not really changing. That's been a constant for a long time. It's about one of the only ones. But, you know, all these tools, I mean, everyone we learn about, use, try a different way. You know, now we have a drone. We send that up in the air, take pictures, see framing, kind of aerial shots of it, understand what's happening. Also, drones are very helpful in like winter and figuring out like where snow is melting and runoff, and where the water flow is, and like it's incredible what you can do. And once you start to dial in a bunch of maps and diagrams and have models of entire properties with every tree, you know, you can place any drone image and get anything from it. It's pretty amazing. So I've often wondered about trying to create like a town-wide Revit model or a village-wide Revit model that would have like the ability to link in all of the different, you know, essentially like a way more detailed Google Earth.
You know, I mean, just like I always say that, you know, old buildings can be smart buildings. I also feel like, you know, small cities can be smart cities. So like a small city like Skinny Atlas, I think, could easily become a smart city with some basic stuff, you know. I mean, you know, for our team to scan a whole town like Skinny Atlas might just only take a couple days, and then we have a point cloud. And another thing you can do that's pretty interesting for those cities is you can scan on a certain frequency. Like you might scan every 6 months, and then you could actually, if those point clouds are georeferenced, you could look at the delta between the 2 point clouds over the course of 6 months and actually see everywhere where the buildings have moved, where the sidewalk has changed, where the potholes are forming, you know, all that kind of stuff. You can see all the deltas. You can see all that with, you know, basically millimeter accuracy. So
that's amazing.
I feel like that could be really valuable for some municipalities as kind of like a early warning system for them. If, you know, buildings, bridges are collapsing, anything like that. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of the things. I mean, Scanaplan, we're also a, you know, small town upstate company, and you know, we're really we really believe in all these, you know, small towns and the historic preservation, you know, the cultural impermanence of these towns. And we really want to be able to bring this kind of tech, I think similar to you, being able to bring this world-class technology into these smaller communities. One last thing I would say, Bill, before we wrap up. So, you know, podcast is called Practice Forward. If you're going to think about practicing forward yourself, looking ahead, what does that mean for you, like over the next 5-10 years, when it sometimes feels like technology is moving a lot faster than tradition?
Yeah, you know, I definitely want to try to keep growing our practice, keep doing what we're doing. A lot of great work, a lot of great people, just creating space in general. I do think that there will always be a need for a brain to perform this task well. I do think that there are definitely cheaper alternatives, but I don't think that necessarily the outcome would be the same. It takes time to craft a space, and depending on the level of comfort one wants to enjoy in that space, they need to participate and have involvement in creating that space.
Yeah.
So, all of those things are on slide bars, but working with people, really being a good listener, and then practice forward is just keep going. We've got hopefully a lot of great years of success and can continue our project growth on the trajectory it's been on over the past couple of years.
Well, it's really interesting to hear all your methods and techniques. It sounds like you've really found a lot of really incredible ways of bringing out your customers and bringing out their vision and finding ways to collaborate and find consensus along the way and really give them very predictable outcomes. So that's really it's great to hear about all that stuff, Bill. Thank you so much for joining us today. Look forward to visiting you in Skinny Atlas. I love the lake and it's so beautiful there. And so really enjoy yourself and hope to catch up with you soon.
Sounds good. Yeah, happy to host you. We'll have to catch lunch when you're in town, and we can host you at our new office. And yeah, we'll go from there. Sounds good. We'll talk to you soon.
Very good. Okay, and thanks for joining again for the Practice Forward podcast. This is Owen Bush signing off, and we'll catch you soon.